It blows my mind that there are actually people out there who can simply hate a game for the dumbest of reasons. And the game that I'm referring to in this situation is South of Midnight, the brand new action RPG that was released by Compulsion Games earlier in April, which featured Hazel, a weaver who was just trying to save her mother and encounters a whole slew of fantastical beasts, which is based on Louisiana folklore. Now, where this game is getting hate is the fact that folks are looking at this and saying that this game is woke. Now, why do you think they're saying that the game is woke? Apparently due to the fact that she is a black protagonist, with some saying that the original character for the game was supposed to have been a red-haired white character. Now, part of the story does show that Hazel is mixed with a white father and a black mother. Now, some may look at Hazel and question the fact that she really doesn't look like she's mixed at all, which on one hand, I could agree with you, but on the other hand, it is not that uncommon where a biracial child ends up taking more traits from one parent versus the other. I've seen it before, and I'm sure a lot of you have also seen it too. So it's not strange that some of these people are trying to make it sound. Another weird thing I've seen them nitpicking is the way she talks and the way she interacts. I'm sorry. As far as I'm concerned, I thoroughly enjoyed how Hazel talks. It felt like someone that I could actually meet in real life. There was nothing about the way she talked that felt forced. It just felt natural for who the character was and where it was that they grew up. They grew up in the South in Louisiana. There are a bunch of people who talk in a similar fashion, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I know I've met people who talk like that, so it didn't feel weird to me. And usually in these types of situations, I could understand on one hand if it felt like they were pushing so much stuff in your face for you to acknowledge the fact that Hazel is a black character. She's going through this, she's going through that. I played through the entire game. Not once was it ever mentioned that she's black. Not once was it ever mentioned that her, like the other parts of her family, were white. They were just people, all in all, living their life, going through their own struggles. Not once did they ever try to make you feel sympathy for where she came from, what her skin color was. They just want you to relate to the character as she is. And some other folks were saying that the story for the game was boring. In my opinion, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The main overarching story of the game is Hazel trying to save her mother. But however, Hazel becomes a weaver, which part of a weaver's role is the fact that they have to help ease the darkness on those that they do meet along their journeys. Which in Hazel's case, she ends up meeting a lot of different people during her story, which for some of those stories, they were honestly very touching, as long as you actually cared to listen and understand what it was that was going on. Yes, for some, they may look at it and say that this has nothing to do with her overarching story plot-wise, but in reality, it does, because this helps Hazel grow into a full-fledged weaver by the end of the game. Which brings us to the next complaint, which was gameplay. A lot of folks said that the gameplay was boring and repetitive. I will say, the gameplay is definitely repetitive, but tell me what game doesn't actually have repetitive gameplay at the end of the day? With the way the game is paced, you get more abilities as you progress. They don't give you everything out the gate, so as you start to unlock more of your abilities, that actually allows you to be able to diversify how you choose to play the game, of course in the confines of all the abilities that you're giving, but it's not as boring, at least it wasn't to me, as some other folks were making it sound. Hell, some folks are saying this was the worst gameplay they've ever had. I will say, there are a lot of other games in the past, some really critically acclaimed games that followed very similar formulas to what they used in South of Midnight. We're looking at games where you end up being stuck in a room until you beat all the enemies there, and then you're able to progress. Devil May Cry does it. Bayonetta does it. There are a ton of other games that have used that same formula, and no one ever really complained about those before. The actual combat itself was pretty simple. You have your basic attacks, and you have a whole bunch of abilities that you can use in tandem with that. Once you use them, they go on cooldown. Cool, that's normal. You have a dodge. You even have a perfect dodge as well. The enemy types were honestly fairly limited. I think I want to say that there was a max of maybe 7 or 8 enemy types when it comes to the standard enemies, which on one hand doesn't sound a lot, but I also vividly remember some other games I played that did not have a lot of standard enemy types. One that comes to mind is Kenna Bridge of Spirits, a game that I genuinely loved when it first came out, which funnily enough, I do strongly believe that South of Midnight took a lot of inspiration from Kenna Bridge of Spirit. Because with Kenna, if you're looking at from the story perspective, it's very similar. Gameplay style, it was simplistic, and to some, I'd say it was repetitive. And the overall flow of the game just felt similar. There's nothing necessarily wrong with one game taking inspiration from another. That's how we have a lot of different games out there. You have Devil May Cry series, you have Bayonetta. Bayonetta clearly took inspiration from Devil May Cry. Doesn't mean that the games are one for one, but you can still see those similarities. But yet, there were people out there who saw that South of Midnight and Kenna were very similar, and that led to them saying that South of Midnight was a ripoff. I would not consider that a ripoff. Everything else about the game is different. It just follows a similar formula. There's honestly saying that there are people out there who are shooting on this game as hard as they are, saying that this is the worst game that they've played this year. This game was woke. This game was trash. It's very concerning to see how these people end up viewing the game and give their reviews on it, because you can clearly hear that they already had an intricate bias before even coming into it from the beginning, which at that point, it's already a lost cause. It almost doesn't matter if this game would have been absolutely phenomenal, they would have still found something to nitpick. But ultimately, for those people, that is their own opinion. It's unfortunate for the people who were probably interested in South of Midnight. See one of those types of reviews, and that actually ends up influencing them to not try this game out, because it is honestly a great game. I personally would give it an 8 out of 10. Story was good. Combat was decent. It wasn't trash. Yes, you can say it gets repetitive, but in my opinion, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It had decent platforming. The graphics and art style was honestly gorgeous. And as someone who enjoys a good story, it was nice to actually see the lore of Louisiana being covered for a change. I don't think I've ever seen any other game that's covered this, so I found that quite enjoyable. So if you're someone who was on the fence about South of Midnight and you enjoy yourself a good story, personally, I say try it out. If you have Game Pass, you have nothing to lose at that point. You can play it on Game Pass. If you don't have Game Pass and you're planning on getting it on Steam, I believe the game is only $40. This wasn't even a $70 game. For $40 for what you get, I think it's 100% worth it. It's a game that you get to play when you want to relax, and again, it doesn't overstay its welcome. If I'm correct, the game is somewhere between maybe 8 to 12 hours long, which is a decent amount of time for a game. I'm tired of games that want to take 70 to 100 hours of my time. There's a ton of shit to play out there, and I don't have the time to dedicate 100 hours to just one. But that's it for this video, everyone. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on South of Midnight and the fact that there are people out there who consider this game to be woke or trash. If you played the game already, what were your thoughts about South of Midnight? And if you haven't played it yet, what's one of the things that's stopping you from potentially checking it out? But if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you love what we do when it comes to video game news and reviews, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss when a new video drops. All right, y'all, that is it for me. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will catch you all later. Peace.